Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another one of our 4-year look back videos. So if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I have done the 6-month look back basically within a couple of weeks of when I started this channel for over 6 years now. Every Saturday I put out a video looking back at the hot comics from 6 months previously to see how they're doing in the market. I have added to that, like my Cash or Trash video, where we look at the hot comics of that week and make some predictions. But here, since May, I think, we've been doing because the often requested longer look back. Like, it was never, everybody was like, look back after a year, look back after 2 years, like, to see what happened with these books. So I've started doing a 4-year look back. Why 4 years? That's how far back I have really good data that I can make actually in a spreadsheet form that I can actually quickly pull up and do. So that's why you guys got a 4-year look back. So this week, I'm only doing these once a month. This week, we are looking back at the September 2021 hot books. I picked 15. I just pulled from all the lists during that month. I pulled 15 books I thought were the most interesting. There were obviously lots of other books that hit the list back then, but these were the 15 I thought were most interesting. So we're going to look back at these 15 and see if we can learn anything. A quick reminder of that, 2021 was still in the comic boom. So that does at least somewhat color what has happened to these books since, but not completely. So without further ado, let's dig in and see what we can learn this month. All right, first up, we have Nocterra, number 1. This was hitting the list because it was an option for a TV show. Scott Steiner said he was actually already working on, confirmed that there's a show going to happen, confirmed that supposedly he was working on scripts. This was 4 years ago. We still haven't seen this show. We don't know. We haven't really heard anything about it being developed or casting or anything. Back then, raw copies were $20 to $30. 9.8 was hitting 166. By the spring, it was already an I'll Be Back borderline trap at 5 to 18 with $80 for 9.8. Now it's a $1 to $7 book, basically cover price. 9.8 is 30 to 45. The costs are slightly less to actually even get them slabbed. So it's a dumpster fire. Not a lot of interest still in the series. I'm not even sure how long the series lasted, but doesn't appear to be any movement in terms of turning this into a show. So, this book has fallen definitely back on hard times and was a book that if you were interested, if you enjoyed the series, you want to get a copy, now's a great time to do it. Next, we have Grendel, number 1 from 1983, first solo title. And basically, this was hitting the list because there was a Grendel Netflix show supposedly coming. I have no idea if this happened or not. I don't remember it happening. If it did, back then, a 9.6 was going for $800, which caused it to hit the list. By the March of the following year, 9.6s were still $800. Raw copies were at $100 to $300. So this was very much worth it back then. Still going strong. Still some hopes, I think, for a show. Since then, now it's a $50 to $135 raw copy. 9.6, most recent sale went for $250. I will say a 9.4 went for slightly more than that about a month earlier. So maybe that's a little low, but still that's a dumpster fire and no reason to have chased this particular book. I think there's a lot of interest in this book, but not near what it was back then during the boom. I think this is maybe as much the comic boom as it is nothing getting made. But definitely those two factors have caused this book to drop back considerably. Next, we have Blip, number 1, hitting the list. This is the first appearance of Mario and Donkey Kong in a magazine, American comic. However you want to put it, they both appeared in here. This is technically their first appearance in American publishing, I guess. Raw copies back then were going for $200, 9.8 for $2,300. On the news that we were getting the Mario animated movie. We got casting news is what caused it to hit the list at this point. That movie came and went. It was a super big success. But by March of that year, 50 to 200, 9.4, 4 to 450. No 9.8 sales around that time. No recent 9.8 sales still, but 9.4 like $130, $30 to $100 down in a dumpster fire. Another one that's not going for nearly what it was going for back then, even though I think there's rumors they're going to make a second one. But not sustaining those kind of values at all here 4 years later. Next, we have Stray Dogs cover gallery, number 1. So I went on and put this one on the list because I thought it was kind of a unique one. Obviously, this is just a book with covers in it. But people went nuts for this. This was during the rush, and people were still very interested in stray dogs at this point. $100 to $150 for a book of covers. And I know it had a lot of covers, a lot of ton of homages, but I was just was stunned when I saw that was on the list. Even though back then it was a dumpster fire, I was just curious to see if there was even any interest still in this book. So obviously it went from $100 to $150 book to a $10 to $50 book, 9.8 to 100. Now I can only find one recent sale. It was for $15 for raw copy. There wasn't, it doesn't appear to be any interest in this series or in this book or this cover thing. But it was a little different than what we typically get. So that's why I included it here, just adding as much out of my own curiosity as anything. Next, we have Spawn number 321. This is the Bjorn Berens 1 in 50 Virgin variant. This was 1 in 50 was going for $125 right out the gate. By 6 months later, it was $55 up to $120. So not doing too bad. A little bit of a down, and I'll be back. Now, only one recent raw sale, $100. Only one recent 9.8, $225, but still in the value ranges that make it just a down and I'll be back compared to what it was initially. But not a ton of interest here for sure. But actually doing pretty well for the books we've looked at on this 4-year look back list. This cover's not doing that bad. Next, we have X-Men number 19, the John Tyler Christopher negative space white variant. So there's a green one of these, there's a red one of these, and this is the white one was the one that was hitting the list. Back then, $150 to $200 for this white variant. By March of that next year, $70 to $100 with a 9.8 sign, only going for $135, but it was only kind of the only 9.8 sale there. A little odd on that one. Only one recent sale here to compare to 9.8 for $130. So overall, we'll keep that as the down in the trap that it was after 6 months. Don't know what raw ones would go for, but they haven't sold recently. Not a ton of these out there even for sale. But these gorgeous John Tyler Christopher covers, this one at least has backed up quite a bit, but not for sure how much, just because not enough sales to really give you good data. Next, we have Infinite Frontier number 6, the Puppeteer Lee 1 in 25. This one I debated. I was looking for one more cover to put on from this month. This was only a 30 to 50. So I often talk about 125s. If they only get to around double ratio, then they're usually not going to hold. They're usually going to end up around ratio and become a trap, or at least an I'll be back, and not going to hold that. Well, this one after 6 months was still 20 to 50. So it was still basically in the same range. Maybe you could do a little better. 9.8s were going for 140 to 160. So this one had actually kind of just didn't go super high, but still kind of held, even though it didn't go super high, which is not something you normally see. So I was curious to see what it would look like 4 years later. Only one recent sale, back actually below ratio, down at $20. So yeah, down in a trap on this one, which is what you typically see after 6 months on a 1 in 25 that kind of only goes to this 30 to 50 value. But I was just curious to see what it would look like after 4 years. And it basically did what we normally see after 6 months. Next, we have Venom number 3, first appearance of Null. This was hitting the list. This was not the peak of this book. It was hitting the list, some renewed interest because of, rumors about Null and Thor 3, I think, and then potentially we were getting the second Venom movie at that point. So there was rumors about, whether or not we'd get Null there. 9.8 for $400 back then, which, like I said, was not the peak of this book. By that spring, it was 150 to 250, or raw copies were 150 to 250. 9.8s were still $300 to $400. Now this book is maybe as low as I can remember seeing it. 75 to 125 for raw copies. 9.8, 150 to 200. So if you're a big fan of Venom, you're a big fan of Null, you kind of never really went after this book because it's always been too expensive. This is about as cheap as I've seen it here 4 years later. So the Venom 3 thing didn't really work out. Supposedly he was in it for Flash, but didn't really mount. They're not making any more of those. Didn't really pan out. They had the Necro Sword, but they didn't really pan out Null and the MCU. So yeah, this book has dropped back considerably. Next, we have West Coast Avengers number 7. First appearance of Jeff the Land Shark. This was hitting the list because he was going to get his own digital comic series. That's been going on for a long time now. They've been printing those. Back then, raw copies were 20 to 40. I thought, wow, that's pretty good for, a pet shark. By that spring, it was 20 to 50. 9.8 to 150, 200. It was very steady, worth it. Like, hey. And then last fall happened, and Marvel Rivals came out, and Jeff became a big part of that game. And since then, this book has spiked huge. So we have our first, I believe, truly like up straight cash book in these 4-year look backs I've been looking at. Maybe I'm forgetting one from the previous months, but this is the first one I really remember. 125 to 200 now for a raw copy. 9.8 475 to 525. Jeff has went to a different stratosphere in the last year because of the Marvel Rivals. And yeah, this is a book that has taken off. So we got a book that didn't go in the tank since 4 years ago. That's actually went the other way. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 361. First full appearance of Carnage. Yeah, we were approaching Venom 2. Would it be good? We knew Woody Harrelson was playing Carnage. Would this work? Back then, raw copies were $160, 9.8 going for $850. By March, after the movie came out, it wasn't really well received. 75 to 200, 9.8, 550 to 600. Now here, several years later, 30 to 100. 9.8, 2 to 300. You used to now you can be able to get it was like 9.4, 9.2 range for $200 to $300 on this book. Yeah, down and I'll be back by that March, but dumpster fire for sure on this one. Is this comic boom dropping off? I think it's part of it, but I also think that like these Venom movies came and went, and they didn't really effectively use Carnage, so the combination has caused this book to go in the tank. So here's a pretty cheap Spider-Man key right now if it's one that you're missing in your collection. Next, we have Star Slayer number 2. This was the first appearance of the Rocketeer, hitting the list because rumors that Disney Plus was going to do a Rocketeer show. 40 to 60 back then, 9.8, 550. By that spring, 15 to 45, 9.8, 250 to 300. So already a trap. And now, 4 years later, no news on a show. At least if they made one, I missed it. $8 to $20, 9.8, 150 to 200. So this book is backed up. So if you're a fan of the Rocketeer, it's a pretty affordable book right now. Next, we have Hit Monkey number 1 from 2010. We were getting a Hit Monkey show on Hulu. The trailer came out, which is why this was hitting the list. 125 to 150, 9.6, 450. Now, then 6 months, but 6 months later, 30 to 80, 150 to 200 for 9.6. So already a dumpster fire, and now 25 to 75. So we're also about the same range, but 9.6 already all the way down to 144. Yeah, dumpster fire for sure on this one. This one got a show. Didn't matter. Book is way, way down from where it was. But actually, 25 to 75, 9.6 for 144 is actually pretty good value for a character like Hit Monkey. Just nowhere near the craziness when the show was getting ready to come out. Next, we have New Avengers number 7. First appearance of the Illuminati. We were getting rumors that Patrick Stewart, that the Illuminati were going to be a part of Multiverse of Madness, and which they were. At least one version of them were. But back then, based on just the rumors, raw copies were $20, 9.8, 285. By that spring, when things were more confirmed, $20 to $80 for raw copies, 9.8, 450 to 600. So this was up in straight cash at that point. 6 months after it had first hit the list, the movie was coming out or getting ready to come out. I forget exactly where we were at in the timeline at this point, but close to, if it hadn't come out, it was about to. The book was jumped up crazy. And now, woof, 5 to 12, 9.8, 45 to 90. That's a big old dumpster fire. This is a book that I warned everyone about at the time when the movie was coming out. Like, don't chase this book right now. This is not something that's going to last. I've rarely been this right. So I'll take my victory lap. But, I mean, even then I said I'll be back, but that was based on timing on when the movie was going to come out as opposed to, and that it did not reach the crazy heights that it did reach that next spring. So next we have Ultimate Fantastic Four, number 22, first full appearance of the Marvel Zombies. I put this on the list because this was hitting the list because we were getting ready to get the What If show, or we were getting the What If show at that point, I think, and we knew there was a Marvel Zombies episode, so that's why it was hitting the list. $40 to $70, 9.8 hit 1,000 on this thing. 6 months later, 35 to 80, 9.87 to 800. So it was an I'll be back. You can see down, I'll be back. Steady, I'll be back. I called it steady back then, I think, because most of the sales were still raw copies. But now, 4 years later, we're literally in the middle of getting the 4-episode Marvel Zombies series. And they may have jumped up a little bit since I downloaded, but I looked at this information up on Sunday. So $10 to $30, 9.8, 170 to 200. Yeah, that's down in a dumpster fire with a show coming out, the cartoon coming out right now. So, yeah, way down on this particular book. Next, we have Young Avengers #1, first appearance of Kate Bishop. This book was a yo-yo for years. We'd gotten a trailer for Hawkeye at this point. We were getting ready to get the Hawkeye show. This is probably about the peak of this book. Raw copies, $280. 9.8 hit almost $1,500. By 6 months later, 100 to 250, 9.8, 800 to 1,000. Now, 4 years later, we have not seen Kate Bishop again. $10 to $50, 9.8, 135 to 200. If you're a Kate Bishop fan, now's the time. So, yeah, dumpster fire on that one. That is our last book of this week. Let me get rid of that before we go. So that is 4 years. We did actually have a book that was up. Jeff the Land Shark is our first 4-year look back that actually was super positive. Everything else has been pretty much a dumpster fire. But, again, comic boom. Projects have come and went. People have definitely forgot them by now. Quick shout out to my members for keeping this channel going. My 2, 4, 5 Robin tier main members: Bear Island, Old Wolf, Monty Ray, Next Reality Collectibles, Coach Vic, Circumstances, Unruly, Planning the Younger, and Jimmy Walker, and the Titan tier, and then Daymares and He Remains. They help me offset costs for this, for StreamYard and everything else, keep me making this content. So thank you to them. And with that, we will get out of here. Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.